Joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitali, NBC News correspondent David Noriega, Marcia Espinosa, former Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security, and back with us, former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo. So, Ali, what can we expect in the Senate today?
Well, there's what we know, which is that they'll likely kick off around 1 p.m. And then, Jose, after that, unless anything significantly changes in the next 2 hours, we're not really sure how this hearing and this moment on the Senate floor is going to go. That's because there was an attempt overnight to make an agreement about the hours of debate and the motions that would be offered on the Senate floor during this Mayorkas impeachment. And that was objected to by one of the conservative senators, Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri, who says he doesn't want to, in his words, aid Senator Schumer in lighting the match to set hundreds of years of precedent on fire. What he's really saying there is he wants to have a trial. And there have been a group of conservative Republican senators who have been pressuring Senator Schumer to do just that. I've even heard from Republican senators who say that they don't think that Mayorkas has done enough to be impeached, but that they worry about the precedent it would set to just simply dismiss these allegations against him. It's why we're seeing senators try to come to agreement on being able to debate this for several hours, as opposed to just immediately dispensing with it. But regardless of how this ends up shaking out, Jose, what the reality is in the Senate is that they don't have anywhere near the amount of votes that they would need to actually convict the Homeland Security Secretary. That's not going to change here.
And so, Carlos, it's very clear that it's not going anywhere in the Senate, but there is a precedent or concerns of precedents being set, I guess, on both sides on this.
Well, Jose, on the one hand, what Republicans want is as long a process as possible because they want attention on the issue of immigration. There's no question that this is political. There's no question that there isn't a clear case that the secretary committed high crimes or misdemeanors as the Constitution outlines as a process for impeachment and removal. But this is about November of 2024, and Republicans want to drag this out as long as possible because they know that the longer that this trial is ongoing, the more the country's going to be focused on the issue of immigration, and that's where they perceive a big advantage in this election.
David, you've been covering this story, and certainly you actually spoke recently with the secretary. What did he tell you, and what's the impact, you think, of what has been going on in the border to this political move on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, Jose, so when I sat down with the secretary recently, his main point was that the immigration enforcement system of the United States, as it exists now, is not designed to handle the kind of migration that we're seeing at the border and have been seeing for years. When I asked him directly about the impeachment, here's what he had to say.
We are enforcing the law. The accusation is that we're not. That's just unequivocally false. Fundamentally, our system is not equipped to deal with migration as it exists now, not just this year and last year and the year before, but for years preceding us, and we need that system fixed. We cannot unilaterally resource ourselves. We need Congress, and it requires a holistic solution.
Jose, his point is that his position is that the situation on the ground on the border cannot meaningfully change without major congressional action. Now, the politics of the impeachment are one thing. The reality and the policy on the ground on the border are another. The fact is, anyone who looks at this objectively agrees that the U.S. immigration enforcement system is badly, severely overwhelmed. That's a reality that has been true for at least the last 3 administrations. Obama couldn't solve it, Trump couldn't solve it, and Biden hasn't been able to solve it. And in the process, the situation has become more and more severe. Now, I also asked the secretary about the Republicans' contention that he could solve this with executive actions that were in place under the Trump administration. He rejected that wholeheartedly, said that those executive actions by Trump didn't solve the problem back in 2019. They're not going to solve the problem today. And the last thing I'll add, Jose, is that the nature of migration to the border has changed dramatically just in the last couple of years, in the sense that we're now seeing a massive rise in the number of migrants coming from faraway countries, India, China, Russia, not the usual countries that we normally see, which are Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries of Central America, that creates unique and extremely difficult challenges that are going to be unique and difficult for any administration to address, whether it's a Biden or a Trump administration. Jose?
Absolutely, David. Unique challenges that each administration has dealt with in a different way. Certainly, President Obama dealt with it one way. Trump another way, and President Biden another way. Marcia, you actually worked for the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Mayorkas, as well as two other secretaries before him. How has the security at the border issue evolved to what it is today?
Well, today we're obviously seeing higher numbers, but let's just look at the irony of the situation that we're facing today. You just showed Secretary Mayorkas in New York City today announcing a new effort to fight child online sexual exploitation. Yesterday, he was on the Hill fighting for funding. Before that, he was negotiating, or not negotiating, but advising a bipartisan group of people on a border bill to actually solve the situation. What we're seeing on the other side are Republicans introducing impeachment matters as a policy difference. There's no evidence here. There are no facts. This is political theater, and it's quite the juxtaposition. You see Secretary Mayorkas out there actually doing the work, focused on his work, while on the other side here, they're playing politics as usual.
Yeah, and going back to the numbers, there has been a record number of border encounters since 2021. Encounters are already above 1.3 million this fiscal year so far. They're on track to surpass the last 3 years. The secretary has actually called the border situation a situation in crisis. How does DHS handle crises?
Well, the department is no stranger to crises, right? They deal with more than immigration, it's cyber, extreme weather. But in terms of the numbers at the border, this is something that the Border Patrol does best. They deal with the situation, they process and put people into immigration proceedings. But the fact is, what Secretary Mayorkas said is true. We're experiencing a high number. We need to focus on the root causes of immigration before people land at our border. And the border bill that they were working on would have done just that. So why couldn't Republicans cross the aisle and vote on the bill rather than cross the aisle and introduce articles of impeachment? It just doesn't make any sense. What we need is more Border Patrol agents. That's what the bill included, more asylum officers, more funding for immigration judges, and money for the cities and states who are facing these encounters.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.